Good evening. My name is Cyrus Youngs, and I am a sophomore just about to graduate in the Fremont campus of Public Community College. This is History 112 with Professor Joe Ragan. I did my presentation on the steam engine. When I was told a long time ago to always start each presentation with a copyright disclaimer, so this is only for an academic purpose. This is for no other purpose. I'm not making any money, so no one else can. The images are all property of their respective owners, and on the second to last slide, there is a citation for each photo. The little numbers below the photos, or right next to them in some cases, are the specific site itself that you can look it up if you need to. So, I think that we should probably determine what a steam engine is. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as an engine that uses the expansion or rapid condensation of steam to generate power and to perform work. Now, I was able to find a letter from Robert Livingston to Thomas Jefferson, which was dated the 26th of January, 1799, where he kind of summed up what the steam engine was to the people of the time. And he said that physics and mechanics never formed a nobler union than in the invention of the steam engine, which at once subjects the most powerful and the most common agents to man. He reposes at ease while fire, air, and water perform his most laborious tasks. He's essentially saying that this is something that is world-changing, and it's a technology that's novel at the time. The history of the steam engine is one that it significantly predates our course. The idea dates as far back as the year 200 BCE. Heron's engine, aka the elophile, was a crude version of steam-powered movement which, while completely impractical and very inefficient, did produce torque, and we can see a couple of examples here in this slide. The idea would continue and change significantly, but the roots of the world-changing invention were there. These three individuals I thought we needed to talk about for a second involved. They dealt with the ideas of the steam engine. And left is Vitruvius, who was a Roman innovator whose writings first described the elophile. In the center is Hero of Alexandria. He developed the elophile that we discussed on the last slide. And of course, on the right is Leonardo da Vinci. He is credited with a steam-powered cannon that he devised, which would be heated and then cold water would be injected behind the projectile, causing the steam to rapidly expand, which in effect fired the weapon. Now, it is unknown if any of these examples were manufactured at the time of their lives, but their importance must be discussed briefly to credit the idea of steam power. The coal problem. The entire area that Great Britain, the island of Great Britain is at, they all have coal seams and they are actually sitting on them. Which meant that the mines for the coal in the 1600s were near the ocean, causing a really high water table. Erosion coal actually washes up on shore, and the British had a steady advantage when it came to that because they wouldn't have to move coal 20 miles across land to ship it somewhere. It was already there. Now, as they would mine, they discovered that flooding was a serious problem because of the high water table. They determined that they could make a lot of money if they could figure out how to evacuate the mines of the flooded water. So they developed horse pumps, which were very expensive in drawing on resources such as labor and horses, because one person always had to mind the horse and walk it around. It's a very inefficient system. It had a low yield, so it didn't move a lot of water, but it did lower the water table enough that they were able to successfully mine some coal. So the idea was that they needed to come up with a better pumping system to evacuate more water so that they could make more money. Lots of coal was left farther down, but it was too expensive and too impractical to get. Now, the steam engine was originally invented as a more cost-effective means of pumping the water out of these flooded mines, thereby allowing the mining of coal that was below the water table. This gentleman is Thomas Savery, and his 3 versions of a steam pump. It was the first pump using vacuum pressure to move water, but it only opened and closed valves which would draw raw water from a readily available place. This wasn't a mechanical action creating a vacuum and causing this to draw. It was just condensation and changing heat in a couple of cylinders which caused the vacuum. This really wasn't widely available or widely used. Some large estates, some mines and towns used his design, but there was no safety valves on it, and he had to run the pressure up way higher than people believed should have been in his cylinders, so they were worried of explosions, and it really didn't catch on. In 1712, Thomas Newcomen developed the first steam-powered engine using a piston which was controlled by atmospheric pressure. He achieved 20 horsepower, and here we see 2 versions of his, one in 1705 and a little larger one. This invention would pump water from hundreds of feet below the surface. This is the first commercially successful steam engine. This was one of the chief contributors to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It is a very inefficient design which limited its location to right outside of coal mines where there was a plentiful supply of fuel. It needed so much coal that it could not be adapted to run anything but a coal mine pump. And I was unable to find any examples where this did run anything other than that. One of the most significant relationships in the history of the development of the steam engine, and in a larger sense the Industrial Revolution, was that of James Watt on the left and Matthew Boulton, who's on the right. Now, Boulton was a wealthy, and he owned a small manufacturing company which was powered by a stream. A drought brought his manufacturing capability to a halt, and he began to explore the use of steam power to work his workshop, which would in effect be a cheaper and more reliable alternative. The friendship between the 2 men blossomed, and they began to work on the adaptation of the steam engine to make it more efficient and useful for something other than a coal mine pump. Boulton supplied the financial backing, while Watt would provide the engineering and ideas. Now, Mr. Boulton allowed Watt to open a steamworks workshop in his Soho manufactory. They continued to make incremental improvements which both increased the efficiency and portability of the steam engine. From 1774 to 1781, as we see here, many improvements were made, including a governor, which is highlighted here with the green arrows, and a flywheel, which is also highlighted by the blue arrows. The flywheel would increase efficiency by storing energy and using it to assist the steam-powered piston, while the governor would ensure that the steam engine operated at the optimum speed. The steam engine is primarily built using cast iron or another metal. The tolerances are very tight, and the pistons must be able to contain compressed steam. Flywheels are metal and needed significant weight to store all of the kinetic energy that is useful in the stroke of the steam engine. It was originally built using trial and error. As manufacturing methods became more refined, so too did the steam engine. By the height of the Industrial Revolution, steam engines were making the parts for other steam engines. One of the most important innovations was the steam emission valve, which we see here highlighted with the red arrows. which would only allow the proper amount of steam into the side of the piston which was working at the time. This alone increased the efficiency of the steam engine by over 18%. By 1784, the steam engine had been developed in such a way that it had the power of the Newcomen engine we talked about earlier, but only required 1/4 of the fuel, according to the BBC documentary The Boulton and Watt Steam Engine. With these improvements, Soho was able to become the first steam-powered manufacturing center in the world. In 1784, William Murdoch is credited with the invention of a model of a locomotive, which we see here in his patent drawing on the left. Now, this is not what we see when we describe a locomotive. It was more of a horseless carriage, but conceptually it began the idea of trains. In 1836, George Fleming sent an application to the U.S. Patent Office with this drawing, which is reflected on the right. It was a concept for a dual piston system which would propel a horseless carriage. This general design would be the foundation for the large-scale steam locomotives, which would change the world of transportation. The Watt and Boulton steam engine and their adaptations scaled the steam engine down in such a way that it became useful as a portable power source, as we see on the left with the American LaFrance fire engine, and on the right with the Russell steam-powered tractor. The most significant features of the steam engine are that it is efficient and able to continuously perform work. It doesn't get tired, and as long as it is properly maintained, it will not break down. The steam engine would be transformative for the entire world. Oliver Evans illustrates this in his patent application, which is dated the 1st of December 1792, when he says, "These engines are of such simple construction that they may, with the convenience, be applied to move any kind of machinery that requires either circular or vibrating motion, and to do the propelling of land carriages with heavy burdens in an easy, cheap, and powerful manner." As you can see, when trying to answer the question of who originally invented the steam engine, the response is very detailed and complex. There have been many people who were involved, and the invention cannot be attributed to one single person. The most influential inventor of the steam engine would have to be James Watt. He was really the driving force behind the innovation which sparked the Industrial Revolution. His designs and inventions were the building blocks which allowed the steam engine to become as important as it has. Steam power would change the world's economies exponentially by making long-distance travel a convenience. It became much easier to send goods and people across the continents or across the oceans. The people were able to connect in almost any level, which was a fundamental change which would benefit the world at large. The modern steam engine does not hold the same purpose it once did. It is very rare to see a steam locomotive or steam-driven pump. It is primarily used today as a turbine for electrical power. It is the primary way of power generation used the world over. The sources of heat are varied, such as coal, natural gas, or nuclear, but it is still the general principle of using steam to perform work. The steam engine is still as valuable as it was at the height of its popularity. While the steam no longer performs the work directly, it supplies the electricity for the majority of the things that do the work. As you have seen, the steam engine has a wide range of uses over its lifespan. Some were not useful at all, and others changed the world's industries. Originally, it was a machine that produced torque and ran in a circle. Then it was used to pump water from mines, making resources obtainable, and in the process of getting them safer. The expansion to manufacturing allowed many products to be made quicker and cheaper. When it became a transportation mechanism, we were able to bridge the world and expand trade. The speed and efficiency of steam travel opened up new avenues and ways to transport perishable goods. Even today, we are reliant on steam power the world over. It supplies the electricity which runs everyday modern convenience we have. It's hard to imagine a world without steam power. This is why I believe the steam engine is the greatest invention of all time. Thank you, good luck in your future educational endeavors, and I appreciate your time. This slide is the information on the photo credits, and this one is the references.